Good morning, everyone. It's Andrew with the Market Mindset. Today, I want to do a reaction video to Josh Hawley, who's speaking about this energy transition. Now, we're going to watch the video, and I'm going to give some reactions to this, and I'll put like as a disclaimer because I have seen this once before. Let's try to remove any of the inflamed comments or the real political parts of this. So I know anyone on the left will get a little bit upset about some of this, but if we could just kind of park some of that and just look at some of the reality zone, I'll touch base on that, especially when we're coming off of news about copper being included as a critical metal for the U.S. So the acknowledgement of trying to make this transition is so heavily mining focused. We also have a report coming out from the IEA where critical minerals market sees unprecedented growth as clean energy demands drive strong increase in investments. But at the same time, the challenges that Europe is having with supply chain and actually getting any of these materials. So under that kind of pretense of which we've talked about before and information, let's watch this video.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to come back, Madam Secretary, to this trade-off between energy security and the radical climate change agenda that you've endorsed, which is less energy security for America, radical climate change agenda. On the subject of these sweeping mandates related to electric vehicles that the Biden administration has imposed, including now for our military, the metals needed to make the lithium-ion batteries in those vehicles are, of course, lithium, nickel, graphite, and cobalt.
So I'll stop right there because that right off the bat, characterizing it as a radical or extreme energy change, that's very inflammatory. Okay, that's fine. So let's not get caught up in that. It is radical in the sense of what they're trying to pull off is very extreme. And to be fair and balanced, there should be a better transition. We're going to be using oil and gas. That's a reality in the West for quite some time onto the future, simply because if you looked at petrochemicals, plastics, what other necessities that oil and gas provides, never mind the fact that if you could just convince China, if you could stop the third world with their environmental practices, with using coal especially, just get them off of coal to natural gas. If you could get Germany off of coal use and onto natural gas, there would be massive positive effects towards the environment. So that's a fact. That's a reality. So there is an extreme push to just stop one when you haven't even got a plan to move forward. But let's take out his inflammatory statements.
Now, can you tell me what nation is the largest producer of refined lithium in the world?
No, I can't.
It's China. Can you tell me which nation is the largest producer of refined cobalt in the world?
No, Senator.
It's China. Do you know what nation is the largest exporter of natural graphite to the United States globally?
No, Senator.
It's China.
Okay.
So in all of these instances, these mandates, your decision to trade off our energy security in favor of a radical climate change agenda is making us more and more dependent on China. And at the same time, you are denying mining, blocking permits for mines in this country that would allow us to develop nickel and copper and cobalt.
So I'm going to stop it there because that's quite a bit. And that is factual. China is and has been in the last 5 years and much longer than that. But I've been talking about that people should keep their eyes open. The amount that they're storing, not only they store gold as well, but the battery energy metals that they've been storing, that they've been building giant vanadium redox batteries. They've been pushing out tons of nuclear reactors. They have been going down this path aggressively with no environmental constraints. And my thesis is that they are willing to take some short-term harm and destroy their environment. I mean, the air is barely breathable there. It makes sense why they do wear masks there. But that their long-term game, that their 20-year plan out will put them as by far the global dominant leader. The issue becomes then whether or not one should do this change or not. Take that off the table. Is you mandate having electrical vehicles, which is great. They work well. I mean, I think you can convince most people that that's a great thing. It wouldn't take that much, although they aren't being adopted as fast as one would like. You could do that, but the issue becomes: do you want to hand over all of that energy and all of that power to China? And we've talked about this before. Your energy reliance, whoever controls that, controls pretty much everything. And there was no plan set forth as to how the US was going to get any of these metals. Canada certainly has no plan as to how are they going to get all this out of the ground. And believe me, we don't even know the reserves we have in Canada because there's been so little investment into mining. But we do know that probabilistically, there's an awful lot. There's a ton that we could be doing. There's so much we could be doing to be able to get these raw materials and resources in order to adequately, safely, and properly do this transition. If you leave it to China, they have no constraints. They're under none of the restrictions that are placed politically in the West, which is also why when you hear these climate discussions, they're focused only at the West and never do they look at the utter destruction from India or China. Now, that's a fact. You can look at the numbers and see the use of or emissions of carbon dioxide, where they come from. And you can see that they've been decreasing in places like the US. Even though demand is huge, they actually have been getting cleaner. They've been doing a lot of work.
Why? Why block the development of these resources in our own nation in favor of making us dependent on China?
Senator, are you referring to the boundary waters?
I'm referring to the
withdrawal?
Twin Metals mine in Minnesota. I think that Senator Bross was just asking about it.
Yes, near the boundary waters, which is an iconic place and, of course, a very valuable ecological system to many plants, animals, species.
But jobs for, let me just say this though, jobs for blue-collar workers in this nation are valuable resources. The livelihood and well-being of American families are valuable resources. The ability of America to have our own industry and not be dependent on China is a valuable resource. Why should those things for millions of Americans be sacrificed in favor of your agenda for radical climate change?
I'll stop you there because the jobs thing isn't going to convince anyone on the left that this is worthy or noteworthy. The argument I would have put forward here is that if we have a climate catastrophe, if this is the end of the world, we're all boiling to death and everything's coming to an end, wouldn't it make a bit more sense to take the steps to ensure that these mines move forward? We need to have NGOs and environmentalist groups present to keep a pushback towards corporate greed, malfeasance, doing things improperly. I'm all for that. The problem is that everything becomes sacred ground. It becomes, there's a wildflower that's, although has no benefit to society, is critical in the development of some ecosystem. They'll do these things to stop projects. And I don't mean legitimate concerns. Most concerns can be met with an economic assessment. They do so much environmental assessments to even get to the stage of a mine that all of these things can be remedied, rectified, dealt with. You could put a bond in the back end to ensure that it's remediated properly. It's just that people don't know because why look at mining? They just assume it's bad. There's no end to things that can be done to ensure safety at any of these mines as well. Of course, accidents can happen. So take that out of the account, and because you don't live in the real world. If you say, well, what if this happens? These things happen. There can be an accident. But once again, there's plenty of things you can do to ensure that there's processes in place. And if, once again, you've got support from the federal government, you've got the support from the World Economic Forum, the big hedge funds, your street capital, your BlackRock, your Vanguard, they'll ensure that you are well supplied in capital to make sure we can make this transition possible. That is, if this is an existential crisis. Does a small plant or wildflower or some inconvenience that may occur having to do an extra study on water flow, is that really going to stop you from saving the planet from the end of the world? Because that's the narrative, that we have to do this transition. So taking out the jobs part, to me, isn't going to pull on anyone's heartstring. Is that if the narrative is that it's we're facing an absolute critical time to make this transition, yet this is what's stopping it, there's one of two things: there isn't a critical issue, or we don't have the right people in place to get things done.
Senator, I know that there's like 1.9 jobs for every American in the country right now, so I know there's a lot of jobs.
Wait a minute. You're telling me we've got too many jobs in the country?
Well, I'm saying that we don't have enough people. That's why we are having a hard time finding folks to work at our department.
But wait, you're telling me that we have too many jobs for blue-collar work? Have you seen the number of jobs we have lost in this country to China in the last 20 years? Do you know where those jobs come from? Over 3 million jobs have gone to China. Do you know where those jobs have come from? They've come out of Midwestern towns like the ones I represent. They are blue-collar workers, and you're sitting here and telling me that we have too many jobs in this country? Are you serious?
Senator, we are working hard every single day. We have processed 20 mining applications, 20 mines or mining modification permits since January of 2021. We are moving forward. We're doing our jobs. We're fulfilling our mission for
You're not moving forward. You're moving backward. You're shutting down and denying permits for mines in this country where we can develop our own resources. You're shutting down oil and natural gassing permits. You're approving taxes and royalties that deliberately suppress American energy development in favor of a climate change agenda. And now you're sitting here and telling me we've got too many jobs in this country. We've got gobs of jobs in this country. We don't need any more jobs in this country. I want to take the strongest possible exception to that comment and to that entire mentality, which I think is very honest. I think it reflects the mentality of your administration, which is when it comes to blue-collar workers in this country, you're on your own. Good luck. Good luck to you. We got plenty, just shut up and go get a job at McDonald's, whatever. No more, quit complaining about the loss of American industry. I mean, good Lord, that is extraordinary. What an extraordinary response.
Okay, I'm going to stop it here because maybe he did the jobs thing to catch her in a trap, because she's now been caught in a trap and it gets worse for her. This bizarre assumption you see pushed in the mainstream news that there's too many jobs. It gives the impression that there's all of these STEM jobs, all of these high-tech jobs, all of these career jobs. That's not what they're talking about. If they have jobs at, say, a mining or energy level in the government, they would be incredible high-paying jobs. And I don't believe they can't get that filled. And if they can't get that filled, it's because they've done such a job of demeaning mining and categorizing it as being terrible that they can't recruit people because no one's interested in the sector. There should have been a process in place for them to go back to their people they've been telling that mining is terrible, to say it's the only answer to get out of this. If there is a crisis, the only answer is all these metals to be able to create this transition. Why wasn't there some process in place to get that stream of people in place? In any event, I could go on, but I thought this was an interesting clip because at least we're finally seeing at the federal level in the US a pushback to common sense. What's the plan? Now, this poor woman is not, she's being thrown under the bus by someone, but it brings up critical issues, about government, about policy, about what's going on, that everyone on the left and right should agree with, is that if there is an existential crisis with climate change, should we not be doing everything to make the solutions possible? Shouldn't everyone be on board with that? Well, the answer is no. None of the environmental groups will go for it, even though the answers come from one area. So this was a quick first reaction video that we've done. Want to give a bit of feedback, but to show people, despite Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan coming out talking about commodities, and this desperate need for critical metals, you're not seeing a budge in that mining sector. And what we need to see is massive movement in that. Now we're facing tough markets right now, make no mistake, and we're hoping it's coming, and it should come. If this is all true and all real, it will come. But right now, the markets are saying there's a discrepancy between reality and not only the Inflation Reduction Act of trillions of dollars being spent, but in also this big shift that we're going through. Anyways, just some thoughts. Thanks for watching, and we'll do some more of these. Take care.